Hey everyone! Today we're diving deep into JavaScript promises. By the end of this tutorial, you'll understand what promises are, how they solve asynchronous problems, and how to use them properly in your code. So what exactly is a promise? Let me explain the concept. A promise is an object that represents the eventual completion or failure of an asynchronous operation. The key points to remember are: first, promises have three states: pending, fulfilled, or rejected. Second, they allow you to handle both success and failure cases. And third, they represent values that might be available now, in the future, or possibly never. Every promise goes through three states. First, it starts in the pending state, which means it's neither fulfilled nor rejected yet. Then, if the operation succeeds, it moves to the fulfilled state. If it fails, it moves to the rejected state. Understanding these states is crucial for working with promises effectively. Why should you use promises? First, they help avoid callback hell, which is when you have deeply nested callbacks that make your code hard to read. Second, they provide better error handling. Third, they make your asynchronous code more readable. And fourth, they allow you to chain operations together in a clean way. Now let's look at the basic syntax for creating a promise. Here on your screen, you can see we're creating a new promise using the promise constructor. The constructor takes a function with two parameters, resolve and reject. Inside this function, we perform our asynchronous operation. If it succeeds, we call resolve with the result. If it fails, we call reject with an error. Now let's see how to consume a promise. We use the then method to handle the success case, and the catch method to handle errors. The then method takes a callback function that receives the resolved value, and the catch method takes a callback for the rejected case. This is how we properly handle both success and failure scenarios. One of the most powerful features of promises is chaining. Here we're fetching data, then processing it, and then saving it. Each then returns a new promise, allowing us to chain operations together. If any step fails, the catch at the end will handle the error. Let's look at promise.all. This method takes an array of promises and returns a single promise that resolves when all of the promises in the array have resolved. Here we have three promises: one that resolves immediately, one that's just a value, and one that resolves after a timeout. Promise.all waits for all of them to complete before returning the combined results. Now let's look at promise.race. This method takes an array of promises and returns a single promise that resolves or rejects as soon as one of the promises in the array resolves or rejects. In this example, promise 2 resolves faster than promise 1, so that's the value we get in the then handler. Let's see a practical example. Here we're using the fetch API to make a network request. The fetch function returns a promise that resolves with the response. This is a common use case for promises in web development, where you need to handle asynchronous network operations. Another practical example is reading a file in Node.js. The fs.promises.read file method returns a promise that resolves with the file contents. This is how you can handle file operations asynchronously using promises. Let's compare callbacks to promises. With callbacks, you often end up with nested code that's hard to read. Error handling is scattered throughout your code. With promises, you get a flat structure, better error handling, and easier chaining of operations. Now let's compare promises to async/await. With promises, you need to use .then and .catch, which can make your code more verbose. With async/await, you can write asynchronous code that looks and behaves more like synchronous code, which is often easier to read and understand. Here's a common mistake when working with promises. If you forget to return a promise in a function, the chain will break. In the wrong example, the function doesn't return anything, so the promise chain is lost. In the right example, we properly return the promise, allowing the chain to continue. Another common mistake is not handling errors. In the wrong example, we don't have any error handling, so if the fetch fails, we won't know about it. In the right example, we include a .catch, to properly handle any errors that might occur. Here's a pro tip. Always remember to return promises in your promise chains. This ensures that the chain continues properly and you don't lose the promise reference. Another pro tip is to use async/await when possible. Async/await makes your asynchronous code look and behave more like synchronous code, which can make it easier to read and understand. Here's a small but important tip. When you create promises, make sure to give them clear, descriptive names. This makes your code more readable and easier to understand. That's it for our tutorial on JavaScript promises. Let's quickly recap what we've learned. Promises represent asynchronous operations. They have three states. You use .then for success and .catch for errors. You can chain promises for complex operations, and you should consider using async/await for cleaner code. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe for more tutorials on JavaScript and web development.